In the vast tapestry of human history, few figures stand as towering and influential as the prophet Moses, known in Arabic as Musa, peace be upon him. His story is one of resilience, divine purpose, and unwavering faith. The story of Moses begins in a dark and oppressive time. Around 1200 BCE in ancient Egypt, the Israelites, a once prosperous people, had fallen into abject slavery under the tyranny of a pharaoh who ruled with cruelty and fear. This pharaoh, fearing the growing population of the Israelites, decreed a horrific command that every newborn male child of the Israelites was to be killed. It was during this time of hardship that a child was born to a humble Israelite family from the tribe of Levi. His mother, fearing for his life yet trusting in divine protection, took a desperate but faithful step. She placed her infant son into a basket, setting it afloat on the Nile River. But this child was no ordinary boy. He was chosen by God for a greater mission. The Nile, instead of being a river of peril, became a river of destiny. The basket carried the baby to none other than the household of Pharaoh himself. Pharaoh's wife, known in Islamic tradition as Asiya, found the child and took pity on him. She convinced Pharaoh to spare the boy, adopting him as their own. And so the boy, who had been born under a death sentence, was raised in the palace of his oppressor. Moses grew up surrounded by wealth and luxury, but as he matured, he began to notice the brutal treatment of his people. One day he witnessed an Egyptian taskmaster mercilessly beating an Israelite slave. Overcome with anger and a fierce sense of justice, Moses intervened and struck the Egyptian, unintentionally killing him. Fearful of Pharaoh's wrath, Moses fled Egypt, leaving behind the life he had known. He wandered eastward, eventually arriving in the land of Midian. There he found refuge among the family of a kind man known as Jethro, or Shu'aib in Islamic tradition. Moses married one of Jethro's daughters and spent years living as a shepherd. It was a far cry from his royal upbringing, but in the solitude of the desert, Moses grew closer to God and developed the qualities of a leader. It was during this time that Moses experienced the defining moment of his life. One day, while tending his flock near Mount Sinai, referred to as Mount Tur in Arabic, he noticed a strange sight, a bush engulfed in flames, yet not consumed by the fire. As he approached, he heard a voice, the voice of God. This was the divine calling Moses had been destined for. God commanded him to return to Egypt and confront Pharaoh, demanding the freedom of the Israelites. Armed with faith and divine support, Moses returned to Egypt. But he did not go alone. God had appointed his brother Aaron, or Harun, peace be upon him, as a prophet to assist him. Together they stood before Pharaoh and delivered God's command, "Let my people go." Pharaoh, however, was arrogant and defiant. To convince him of God's power, Moses performed mighty signs and miracles, such as turning his staff into a serpent and bringing forth plagues upon Egypt. These plagues, the rivers turning to blood, swarms of locusts, hailstorms, and more, were clear signs of divine power. Yet Pharaoh's heart remained hard, and he refused to free the Israelites. Finally, after repeated warnings, the ultimate divine punishment descended. The angel of death took the firstborn of every Egyptian household, sparing only the Israelites who had marked their doorposts with the blood of a lamb, as God had instructed. Overcome with grief, Pharaoh finally relented, allowing the Israelites to leave. The Exodus, the miraculous escape of the Israelites, was a pivotal moment not just in Moses' life, but in the history of monotheism. Leading his people out of Egypt, Moses faced one last challenge, the Red Sea. With Pharaoh's army pursuing them, the Israelites seemed trapped between the sea and their enemies. But Moses, with unwavering faith, struck the sea with his staff. Before their eyes, the waters parted, creating a dry path for the Israelites to cross. When Pharaoh and his soldiers followed, the sea closed in, drowning them. Free at last from the clutches of Pharaoh, the Israelites began their journey to the Promised Land. But freedom brought new challenges. As they wandered through the wilderness, their faith faltered, and they often complained of hardship. They doubted Moses and even turned to worship a golden calf in his absence. Despite this, Moses remained steadfast, repeatedly guiding them back to the path of righteousness. On Mount Sinai, Moses received one of the most significant revelations in religious history, the 10 Commandments. These divine laws became the ethical foundation for generations to come, emphasizing justice, compassion, and fidelity to God. Moses spent the rest of his life leading his people, enduring trials and opposition, but remaining loyal to the mission God had entrusted him with. He dedicated his life to teaching the Israelites about obedience to God and building a moral and just society. Toward the end of his journey, standing on Mount Nebo, Moses gazed upon the Promised Land from afar. It was a bittersweet moment. While he had led his people to its very brink, God decreed that Moses himself would not enter the land. His mission was complete, and soon after, Moses passed away. His burial place remains unknown, a testament to the humility of his life. The legacy of Moses endures as one of the greatest prophets recognized by Judaism, Christianity, and Islam alike. His story teaches us about faith and perseverance in the face of adversity, the importance of justice, and the power of trust in God's plan. And so the story of Moses, his courage, his trials, and his unwavering commitment to God resonates across time, reminding us of the transformative power of faith and the enduring strength of the human spirit. Moses didn't just lead a people out of bondage, he illuminated a path for all humanity, guiding us toward the eternal light of truth and justice.